November 19th, 1943, Enterprise and her task group are within striking distance of her main target in the Gilberts, Macon Atoll. The invasion will be a two-pronged assault. While Marines make an amphibious landing at Tarawa, Enterprise will support the simultaneous invasion of Macon by soldiers from the Army's 27th Division. The two forces will attempt to capture both atolls at the same time. Macon Atoll's main island is Tarawa, an important seaplane and airbase that is manned by nearly 800 Japanese sailors, Marines, and Korean laborers. Tarawa's land defenses include two tank barriers, one on the east near a village, and one to the west near Onchong's wharf. Each barrier is made of logs, barbed wire, concrete pillboxes, and anti-tank guns connected by a series of rifle pits. To the south, along the ocean shore, are three 80mm coastal guns, 10 machine gun nests, and 85 rifle pits. Along the lagoon to the north, Tarawa is defended by 80mm coastal guns, flak guns, and machine guns. For 6 solid days, American shell fire has hammered away at these defenses, softening them up for an invasion. But now, it's the Big E's turn to deliver a heavy dose of shock and awe. Dawn. Enterprise turns into the wind as the first strike groups prepare to launch. 33 bombers and fighters roll off Enterprise's deck, climb into the morning sky, and head for Macon. Their mission, destroy the enemy guns and pillboxes. 75 miles from Enterprise, the Japanese garrison at Macon is just beginning to stir. As the sun rises over the atoll, they have no idea of the new force that's about to hit them. Enterprise Hellcats drop out of the sky, blasting the pillboxes and lagoons with lethal 50 caliber machine gun fire. The 1-2 punch of Hellcat fire and Enterprise bombs has reaped nightmarish results. Day 1 of the battle for Macon is a gruesome success. As one savage day of fighting ends, the U.S. fleet prepares for the next deadly phase of battle. November 20th, 1943. As assault troops from the 27th Division climb over the sides of transports into landing craft, Enterprise air groups storm off on another set of ferocious attacks on Macon. 5:30 a.m., the first strike group launches from the deck of Enterprise. 70 miles away, Japanese forces on Macon await the coming onslaught. Suddenly, the dark shapes of cruisers, destroyers, and transports appear through the morning haze. There are dozens of them. Enterprise SBDs and torpedo planes begin their descent on the island, ready to parole the enemy defenders to hell. Enterprise warplanes unleash a ferocious series of attacks on the Japanese positions, while the cruisers and destroyers move in for the kill. Now, with more Enterprise bombers screaming through the skies and U.S. warships taking aim, the enemy garrison at Macon is about to get an even closer look at American firepower. 75 miles away, as Enterprise planes storm the skies, cruiser USS Baltimore and the American gunships take aim at Macon Atoll. Baltimore and the destroyer escorts open up and pepper the island with explosive naval gunfire. The enemy positions shake from the deadly impact of American shells. By 8:30 a.m., U.S. soldiers are hitting the beaches as bombs and shells continue to nail the enemy bunkers and pillboxes further inland. Enterprise Hellcats and bombers sweep in and strafe Japanese machine gun nests with merciless firepower. As ground forces begin the savage process of clearing enemy positions with rifles, machine guns, and artillery on the beaches. For the next 4 days, Enterprise pilots and Army riflemen share a working partnership. The Big E's air groups never let up, and each day brings another meal of blood and body parts. As the assault on the maze of pillboxes, bunkers continues. But the Enterprise airstrikes have done their job. The Japanese are unable to mount a strong defense. As November draws to a close, The Gilbert Islands are now firmly in the hands of U.S. forces. Unlike the months-long campaign for Guadalcanal, the U.S. Navy now has the power to deliver a faster killing blow. What begins at Macon and Tarawa will continue until the enemy is brought to its knees. For the mighty Enterprise, the Gray Ghost, it is only the beginning of a long campaign. Summer 1943. The Big E slips into Puget Sound. It's the first time the mighty carrier has been stateside in years. Now, the decorated ship is in for a massive overhaul to make her even tougher and more deadly.
In summer of 1943, the Enterprise went through a repair overhaul. She had been through significant combat and suffered a lot of damage. They looked at this and drew lessons learned from it.
Hundreds of yard workers swarm in to trick out the mighty flat top and get her ripped and ready for more combat. Her additions: a protective torpedo blister, more guns, new radar, and a new plane that will literally change the face of war.
The arrival of the F-6F Hellcat is a real watershed in terms of the American capabilities to both bring offensive firepower to the Japanese and also to defend the fleet effectively.
33 feet long, with a maximum speed of 376 miles per hour to the Wildcat's 320 miles per hour. The F-6F is faster and 5 feet longer than the Wildcat. She's also got more firepower. With a standard armament of 6 50-caliber machine guns, she can deliver 2,400 rounds of fearsome ordnance on the enemy and can launch bombs or unguided rockets. U.S. Navy finally has a fighter plane that is more than a match for the legendary Zero.
It's a deadly aircraft when you consider the complement of 50 caliber machine guns on it. It's also rugged and reliable. It's going to change the course of the Pacific War.
The Navy realizes that the greatest threat to carriers like Enterprise are enemy air attacks and Japanese torpedoes.
They proceed to install a torpedo blister along 3/4 of her length that will give her better protection against any torpedo hits that she suffers.
Japanese torpedoes killed her sisters Yorktown and Hornet. The Navy is bound to ensure that Enterprise does not suffer the same fate. The torpedo blister is a steel belt that wraps around the outer edge of the Big E's hull. Between the huge bulge and the ship itself is a part flooded, part air-filled compartment that will absorb the shock of explosion and the sharp fragments of a Japanese warhead. 18 more feet of solid steel and timber are added to her overall length, and her damage control equipment and radar is replaced. But the most important improvement: new 5-inch guns and 36 additional 40mm and 20mm anti-aircraft guns.
The guns are the main thing. We had more quad 40s, and I can't remember now how many there were. Those are big cannons, and they were, when they go off, they make a lot of racket. We had better armament.
Brand new fire control systems link her 5-inch and 40mm batteries. Defending the carrier isn't easy. Enterprise's firepower must pepper the skies with a barrage of flak to hit Imperial planes. But in order to kill the enemy, accurate shooting is a must. Radar-controlled directors can pinpoint the distance and elevation of incoming aircraft and help ensure a kill. Mark 37 and Mark 51 gun directors are mounted on either side of the Big E's island. These systems will provide vital target data and will guide the fire of Enterprise's heavy weapons. The directors calculate firing orders for the gunner's mates, giving the crews the accurate elevation, range, and velocity of an enemy target. And the radar can detect incoming Japanese aircraft at 45,000 yards and enemy vessels at 40,000 yards. The Big E will now be able to shred any incoming enemy planes that invade her airspace, day or night. Nothing in the Japanese anti-aircraft arsenal can compare to the firepower of the radar-guided 40mm guns and 5-inch rifles.
By the end of World War II, no one else's anti-aircraft defense has come anywhere close to the Americans. American warships are incredibly dangerous to approach. by the end of 1943, and that situation only gets grimmer for any Japanese attacker as 1944 and 45 goes on.
Now, she joins one of the largest naval fleets ever assembled in history.
In the fall of 1943, the U.S. Navy is now in a position to begin initiating this long-anticipated drive through the Central Pacific that everyone has known is coming.
Only a year before, Enterprise was the only carrier left to fight in the Pacific. Now, she's teamed with an armada. The flagship of her task group, Enterprise sails with light carriers Monterey and USS Belleau Wood, battleships Massachusetts and Indiana, cruiser Baltimore, and 6 destroyer escorts. She's also got her old friend, battleship North Carolina, veteran of the Eastern Solomons. Together, this force can deliver the fury of thousands of explosive shells and a venomous strike of more than 200 warplanes.
There was a feeling that we had a lot of power and we're going to use it.
Enterprise and the Pacific Fleet is about to set off on one of the longest naval campaigns in world history. It will mark the start of 560 days of war before she can go home. 560 days of pure hell. February 15th, 1944. Central Pacific. USS Enterprise is steaming toward the Caroline Islands. She's not alone. On either side of her, stretching nearly as far as the eye can see, are 8 other aircraft carriers, 6 battleships, 10 cruisers, and dozens of destroyers. 500 miles ahead of these ships, at the heart of the Caroline Islands group, is Truk Atoll, one of the largest atolls in the Central Pacific. An atoll is an island formation in which a coral reef encircles a lagoon. The reef that rings Truk Atoll is 140 miles long and 33 miles in diameter, creating a massive lagoon that is home to 5 major islands and dozens of smaller ones. This island formation provides a very large and very secure harbor area, and the Japanese Navy typically anchors over 100 ships here.
It was, for the Japanese, one of the most important fleet operating bases that they maintained during the Second World War.
Many compare it to Pearl Harbor.
It had 2 ship anchorage areas, 3 or 4 airfields, machine shops, you name it.
3 of Truk's islands, Moen, Param, and Eden, contain airfields with runways, hangars, and fuel storage facilities. The main island, Dublon, is home to headquarters and communications buildings. To protect these extensive assets, the atoll is bristling with anti-aircraft batteries. Based around weapons like the dual-mounted Type 89 127mm gun. A fearsome aircraft menace, it delivers a 5-inch, 50-pound projectile and can pick off aircraft at altitudes up to 25,000 feet. USS Enterprise fighters and bombers will soon face those guns. Enterprise and her massive task force are on a mission. Target, Truk Atoll. Objective, USS Enterprise aircraft will destroy enemy ships at anchor, crater airfields, and explode parked enemy bombers. Strategy, Enterprise fighter planes will gain air superiority, while dive bombers sink enemy ships, and torpedo bombers decimate airfields with contact bombs. February 16th, 1944, 6:45 a.m., morning of the attack. 12 Hellcat fighters launch from aircraft carrier USS Enterprise. The fighters join up with 60 additional Hellcats from other nearby carriers, and the combined force of 72 planes speeds toward Truk Atoll. The Hellcats' mission: gain air superiority. Take out any Japanese Zeros that come up from Truk to meet them. 90 miles southwest, 7:15 a.m. more than 50 enemy fighters take off from airstrips at Truk Atoll. Their mission: intercept and kill the encroaching American fighter planes. The Zero is more maneuverable and has a longer range than the Hellcat. But the American fighter is faster, has better armor and better armament. And most important of all, American pilots are far better trained than their Japanese counterparts by this point in the war. Soon, when enemy meets enemy over Truk's outer coral reef, it's a frantic, murderous aerial clash.
There was all kinds of crazy air combat going on. It must have looked like fly soup up there. And about every 30 seconds or so, you could see a Japanese Zero on fire, steaming straight for the water.
10 miles northeast, a squadron of 12 torpedo bombers from Enterprise meets another from USS Yorktown, the new carrier named for Enterprise's sister ship, lost at Midway. They are just finishing their 90-mile flight from the American task force and are starting to reach the edge of Truk's barrier reef. But before the Avengers can drop their payloads, they have to make it to their various targets. Airfields on the major islands of Eaton, Moan, and Parham, 6 miles inside Truk's barrier reef. It's a challenge, because the moment the Avengers begin crossing the barrier reef, anti-aircraft guns open up on them.
These guys are trying to get to their target with all the flak exploding around them and maybe taking a little piece out of their wing here and there. You know, there's nothing you can do to defend yourself. You're in major formation, so you're not going to be doing massive unplanned jinking maneuvers because you're going to run into your fellow pilots. So you just fly on through it and hope for the best.
10 dive bombers are incoming from USS Enterprise. They buzz in to attack the ships in the harbor. They're hoping to get a crack at the carriers and battleships. With anti-aircraft fire coming at them from all directions, and stray Zero fighters streaking through the harbor area spraying lead. The pilots nose their planes over into a 70-degree dive angle.
Our attack was pretty canned. It was a vertical dive from about 10 to 12,000 with a release at 2,000 and out by 300 to 500 feet.
Hurtling earthward, they release their 1,000-pound contact bombs. Bombs large enough to damage a battleship and designed to explode on contact with the targets. No need for delayed fuses here. The bombers will pull out high enough and soon enough that the exploding bombs will not endanger them. Moments later, multiple vessels in Truk's primary anchorage between Dublin and Eaton Islands explode with stunning violence.
I can remember looking over to the port side and I saw a ship go up. It looked like the A-bomb later on. I mean, tremendous.
The hammering of Truk Atoll continues throughout the day. As Enterprise and Yorktown bombers make their way back to the task force, squadrons from other carriers swoop out of the sky toward the Japanese stronghold to continue the assault on enemy ships and airfields. Bombers from USS Enterprise make additional runs throughout the day. And when evening darkness finally brings a pause in the action, the Big E has broken its record for tonnage of bombs dropped in a single day. More than 900 tons. Second Battle of Truk Atoll. In mid-February 1944, aircraft from USS Enterprise and her sister carriers devastated the most heavily fortified Japanese naval outpost in the Pacific, Truk Atoll. Thousands of tons of shipping sunk, dozens of bombers destroyed on the ground. But But just 10 weeks after this hammering of the Japanese outpost, new aerial reconnaissance photos have revealed a worrisome development. The Japanese have repaired much of the damage from the attack and have refortified the atoll as a bomber base. The Japanese must not be allowed an airbase from which they can disrupt the American island-hopping efforts. And in the pre-dawn hours of April 29, 1944, USS Enterprise and her fellow carriers are back in the waters off Truk Atoll to pummel the vexing outpost once again. The aerial reconnaissance photos make clear that Truk Atoll has again become a formidable defensive bastion. The Japanese have added many new anti-aircraft gun emplacements, some radar-controlled, a technology that makes the weapons much more accurate. It will, again, be a perilous job for Enterprise bombers to approach the atoll to take out the new airfields. Once again, this morning's attack leads off with a sweep of the skies by Hellcat fighters. The fighters launch in the pre-dawn darkness to clear the way for the bombers to follow. With the fighters on their way toward the target, dive bombers and torpedo bombers begin launching from Enterprise and other task force carriers. Many miles out ahead of the bombers, the Hellcat fighters cross Truk's barrier reef and prepare to meet a storm of angry Japanese Zeros. Enterprise task force bombers spend the rest of the day streaking into the lagoon to pummel parked planes, hangars, and bomber strips on the island of Moen. The bombers also pay special attention to anti-aircraft batteries on Moen, exploding gun emplacements, and occasionally sending long metal barrels hurtling skyward. Japanese hideout has proven to be a paper tiger. The assault on Truk has decimated a vast and irreplaceable quantity of Japanese shipping and bomber aircraft in the Central Pacific. 3 light cruisers, 4 destroyers, 3 patrol craft, and some 36 merchant ships and auxiliaries.
They left a lot of ships there, and I'm glad to report we got them all.
The Japanese have also suffered the loss of some 270 aircraft, fighters, and bombers. Hundreds of Japanese soldiers, sailors, and air crewmen are dead. And the loss of support facilities and airfield infrastructure is momentous. Enterprise is responsible for 1/3 of the enemy's total loss. American forces, on the other hand, have suffered 1 aircraft carrier damaged, 25 aircraft downed, and 40 air crewmen and sailors killed. For the stunned Japanese, Truk will be of no further use for the rest of the war.
When the reports first filtered back to Imperial Naval Headquarters that they had lost 220,000 tons of shipping, one Imperial Naval diarist said that the shock was beyond comprehension. It was a truly devastating event.